Welcome to First Mondays in the Rare Book Room at the New York Academy of Medicine for July 2020, exploring our digital collections and exhibits. For a number of years now, the Rare Book Room has been open for a tour on the first Monday of the month at noon. Since we can't be at the Academy in person right now, this month I'm offering an introduction to our digital collections and exhibits to introduce you to some of the content we have online in the hopes that you will go back and explore it on your own later. I just want to say a few words about the New York Academy of Medicine before we start. The Academy was founded in 1847, and for most of our history, we've been devoted to addressing issues related to public health. Our organization has changed over time, but we see ourselves as champions of health equity. We reaffirm that commitment through our current vision that everyone has the opportunity to live a healthy life, and our mission, which is to drive progress towards improved health through attaining health equity. I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself. Normally, I would be welcoming you into the Academy and the Rare Book Room in person, but today I can only welcome you in a virtual space. My name is Arlene Shaner, and I've been the Historical Collections Librarian at the Academy for almost 20 years. Sharing the collections with visitors is one of the things I enjoy the most about my job, and I'm happy that I can still do that, even though we can't be together. This is the Rare Book Room, the space where readers come to consult all kinds of materials from our collections, from early manuscripts to current secondary sources about the history of medicine, to archival materials that tell us about the Academy's own history and also about medicine as it changed and professionalized over time. It's a beautiful space, and anyone is welcome to make an appointment to come in and use it. The first books were donated to the library right after the Academy was founded in 1847, at our second meeting on January 13th. We've been open to everyone since 1878, and we have about 550,000 volumes, including about 32,000 rare books, as well as hundreds of thousands of pamphlets, manuscripts, archives, ephemera, and so much more. We're looking forward to having readers back in the reading room in person sometime soon, but we have lots of digital content that you can look at from anywhere. What I want to do today is introduce you to our digital collections and exhibits portal to give you a chance to learn a little bit about the content we have there and to help you figure out how to get back to the site so you can explore it on your own whenever you want. I'll be sharing 3 of our digital collections with you. We'll spend most of our time with one of those collections and then take a quick look at 2 others. Let's start by looking at Facendo il Libro, or Making the Book, a digital collection and exhibit about the making of the Fasciculus Medicinae, an early printed anatomy. This digital collection and exhibit offers people the chance to explore 5 editions of an early group of medical texts that we call the Fasciculus Medicinae, or a little bundle of medicine. First printed in 1491, multiple editions of the Fasciculus in several different languages appeared until the 1520s. Our 5 editions of the text were printed between 1495 and 1522. We digitized all 5 of our copies of the Fasciculus, and you can page through each one on the website. You can see all of them displayed here, along with a link that lets you compare the illustrations so that you can see how they change from one edition to the next. Up at the top of the screen, though, you can also see that you can look at the books through our online exhibit portal, which has lots of additional content. Of the editions of the Fasciculus that we own, my favorite is the one that was translated from Latin to Italian by Sebastiano Manillo from Rome and printed in Milan in 1509 by the Legnano brothers. This copy is not in its original binding, but the later binding is a collector's binding, reminiscent of the style favored by Jean Grolier, the collector for whom the Grolier Club, a noted book collectors club here in New York, is named. When we look at the first page of the book, we can see the list of all the texts that are inside, up at the top. Unlike the title pages that we've come to expect, this page serves as more of a table of contents. Below the list is a scholar, Petrus de Montagnana, seated in his study, consulting a book. Below him, below the surface of the desk, is a stack of other books horizontally, because mostly people kept their books in a book press and didn't put them on bookshelves. And arrayed above him are the works of many famous medical authors, including Hippocrates, Galen, Rhazes, and Avicenna. In front of him are several seated figures with baskets, which may contain flasks of urine for examination. We know that Petrus was a real person, but we don't think he had any connection to this set of texts. He may be pictured here to lend some extra intellectual authority to the book's contents. The name that is most closely tied to this set of texts is Johannes de Kethem, but we really don't know much about him either, or about whether he did indeed bring this collection together. You can learn much more about the history of the fasciculus on the exhibit side of the website, where we have essays about it, as well as about early 16th century printing, especially in Venice, where many editions of this book were printed, and about the illustrations, some of which began as illustrations in earlier manuscripts. One of the most famous illustrations in the fasciculus is this one, which shows a physician visiting a patient who is suffering from the plague. The image appears right at the beginning of the treatise that explains how to avoid getting the plague and how to treat it if you do get it. The doctor is taking the patient's pulse while holding an aromatic sponge to his own nose. People believe that the plague was caused by malaria, bad air, and that you should protect yourself from getting it by inhaling aromatic substances. There are 2 attendants holding burning torches to illuminate the room, and because the smoke was thought to purify the air, who are on either side of the doctor. Behind the bed are several women who are bringing in other supplies, including a bowl that will probably be used for bloodletting, one of the most common medical treatments of the time. If we go back to an earlier page of the Facendo il Libro website and switch to the online exhibit view, we can explore all the illustrations without paging through the individual books. And we can compare what happens to these illustrations as they are copied and passed from one edition to another. We'll keep using the plague visitation scene as we look more closely at the illustrations. In this section of the website, when you choose a picture to look at, all 5 versions of it will display on the screen. Here, we're looking at the versions of this scene from the editions of 1495 and 1500. And you can see that there's descriptive text that helps you learn more about what is depicted in each illustration. We've scrolled down a little bit on the screen now so that the whole illustration from 1500 is visible. Our copy was colored by hand, a little bit crudely, probably by using stencils. We can also take a closer look at the illustration so that it's easier to see the details. We're looking at the illustration from the 1495 edition again. If we were really on the website, rather than looking at a screenshot, we would be able to enlarge this image even more to make all of its details visible. We can see the physician examining the patient, the two attendants, the women in the background, and way down in the foreground of the image is a little cat. Notice that the patient's head is on the right in this image, and the doctor is facing in that direction as well. When we look at the image from 1500, which is very similar to its predecessor, we can see there's one difference, and that is that the little cat has disappeared. Most of the other features are very similar. Returning to the 1509 edition we were looking at earlier, the first thing we notice is that while the scene is the same, everything has been reversed. If you copy an image to be used as a woodblock from an original, it will reverse in the next iteration of the printing. The head of the bed is now on the left, with the physician facing the patient, and the whole scene is more elaborate. The little cat has also returned, now seated at the feet of the physician. You'll see that the patient is wearing a shirt, where in earlier copies of the illustration he had a bare chest, and the clothing worn by the physician and his attendants is much more elaborate than the clothing they were wearing before. Plus, the bed is a fancier bed, and even the tile floor has more of a pattern. We could spend so much more time looking at Facendo e Libro, but we'll leave it behind for now and take a quick look at two of our other collections. I want to spend a few minutes introducing you to two collections of ephemera: our William H. Helfand collection of pharmaceutical trade cards, one of the first sets of materials that we digitized, and our most recent project, a small group of images from the Robert Matz Hospital Postcard Collection. Produced mainly during the 19th and early 20th centuries, trade cards were a popular way to advertise all kinds of products. The cards in the Helfand collection are mostly for patent and herbal remedies, although there are also a few for things like cosmetics and chocolate, and almost all of them were printed in the United States. Pharmacies gave these cards away with purchases, and they quickly became collector's items. Some cards have an image on the front and information about the product on the back. Other cards were blank on the back, and the pharmacy could use that space to advertise itself. You can browse through all the cards in the Helfand collection, looking at small images of each one, and then choose to take a closer look at any of the individual cards that interest you. Here's a charming card for AYER'S Hair VIGOR, which was supposed to return hair to its natural color and make it healthier. 4 mermaids are happily brushing their hair with the tonic, boxes of which they seem to have rescued from the ship that is sinking behind them. They also have no interest in the poor sailors who were on board that ship, who must be sinking into the watery deep with the ship itself. If we scroll down the page, we can see that there's lots of other information about each card, including the manufacturer, the conditions the product was meant to treat or cure, and subject headings that tell you more about different things that you see on the front of the card, including, in this case, mermaids and hairbrushes. We can also take a look at the back of the card, which in this case is pre-printed, with everything you need to know about AYER'S Hair VIGOR. If you look right above the black box with the image, you can see a tiny icon showing a pair of scissors. Clicking on the scissors takes you to a screen where you can print the image or download it for your own use. Many, but not all of our digital collections give you this option. The last collection we're going to take a quick look at is the Robert Matz Hospital Postcards. Local physician Robert Matz has been collecting these postcards for decades, and a few years ago he decided to give them to us as a gift. They arrived in several installments, and he has already promised us another one. There are about 2,000 postcards in this collection altogether. The postcards show hospitals from all around the country. At the end of 2019, we digitized 118 of these cards and put them up in the digital collections and exhibit part of the website. To start with, we decided to digitize a group of postcards from each of the 5 boroughs of New York City. You can choose a borough by clicking on the postcard associated with it. Here are some of the postcards from Manhattan, and you may see hospitals you recognize here, like Bellevue and New York Hospital, but there are others that no longer exist, like the Lying-in Hospital in the upper left-hand corner. Because the New York Academy of Medicine is located on 5th Avenue and 103rd Street, I chose postcards from hospitals that are right in our neighborhood. Here's Mount Sinai, which is located just to the south of us. When we look more closely at this postcard, we can see that the view shows the hospital from across the street in Central Park, but from an era before the construction of the stone walls that run along the west side of 5th Avenue and separate the park from the street. The park is almost completely a grassy sward, with young trees located close to the 5th Avenue sidewalk. Just north of the Academy's building, between East 105th and East 106th Streets, is the Flower and 5th Avenue Hospital, which was also home to the New York Medical College before it moved up to Valhalla, where it is still located. The former hospital building is now a long-term care and rehabilitation center, so it hasn't lost its medical use. One of the most interesting things about many of our postcards is that they were sent. And here you can see the handwritten message on the back of this card. The card was mailed on March 24th, 1943, to a soldier who was training at the Amarillo Airfield in Amarillo, Texas. We're working on enhancements to the Matz collection this summer, and one of the things we're doing is adding transcriptions of the messages that appear on the back of postcards that were sent. Because we know that some of the handwriting can be difficult to read. The young woman who wrote this card, presumably to her military sweetheart, was a student at the medical college and took a few minutes between classes to dash off this note to him about how happy she is to be there and about getting her new books. We hope you'll continue to explore our digital collections on your own. You can see everything we looked at today and more at the website that is on this screen. And remember, you can always find me at library@nyam.org if you have questions about the collections, if you have a research project in the history of medicine, or if you want to know anything more about the Academy. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to meeting you in person at some time when the Academy is open to the public again.